what do men want?
Manifests itself in relationships, and you feel it in relationships, and they can be very powerful spiritually. And if that's what you need, that's what you should go for.
And she said, oh, I'm going to go do a sweat lodge this evening. And I begged her to take me along, and that was about 6 years ago.
Welcome to Speaking of Men. This is public access television for Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm your host, Mike Rivas. Joining us today in our studio is Phyllis White from the American Red Cross. We'll be speaking with Phyllis about those top safety hazards that affect children and parents, and what parents and babysitters should know and be concerned about concerning those hazards. Phyllis is a 23-year resident of Albuquerque. She's a mother of 5 and a grandmother of 8. She was a volunteer with the American Red Cross for 11 years, and for the last 8 has been a health and safety instruction specialist with the American Red Cross. Welcome to the program, Phyllis.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
Could you start off maybe by giving us a little bit of a history and background of the American Red Cross?
Well, the American Red Cross actually started with Clara Barton for the United States, but here in New Mexico, we've had it for about 75 years. And we started off with helping the military, and that's what the Red Cross goals were at that time. The program started down from nurses helping the military, so they had a nursing program at that point. Then they went down to youth, helping the kind of doing letters back and forth and helping the nurses out, help the military people. So that was some of the programs. Now we have many, many programs, which is health and safety, covering all the first aid, water, these things. And then they go into military. They have Agent Oranges added on to our program, which is working with the military and the family members also. So a lot of programs have been added since 75 years ago.
You bet. We always think of the American Red Cross in times of disaster, earthquake, fire, flood, those types of things. What kind of support can New Mexicans expect from you guys?
Well, we need a lot of volunteers for that, but we do have a good disaster team. If something happens to the family, such as the natural disasters, a fire goes through the home, burns you out, or goes through the apartment complex, and you have many families out, our disaster team goes down and surveys the fire, see how much damage, is the area livable, and then from there they go on down to interview the people. From that point they go back to the caseworker works with the individuals from there. If you're left at home standing in front of your yard with your nightgown and your t-shirt or your bare socks and shoes and whatever, and hanging on your kids because you just survived, they do provide you a shelter also. So this is things that we can do today. Usually the fire departments call us for a lot of those. Right. And so we kind of work together as a team again, as a city unit.
You bet. You were telling me in preparation for the program that fire and flood seem to be the two
major ones. Flash floods is very dominant here in New Mexico. We do have in the last 4 years, tornadoes, so we've had some damage from tornadoes also, pulling up trees or landing the trees on top of the houses, which makes it unlivable also.
So you have volunteers and programs in place throughout New Mexico and most of the major cities and serving outlying areas. I know a lot of emergency services in New Mexico is dependent upon volunteer.
Definitely. Our Red Cross volunteers are sometimes volunteers for the ambulance, the fire department, or rescue squads. When we have a volunteer, it's like, hang on him, he's like gold to us. So volunteers is what gives the education out there and helps people.
You guys are probably one of the chief CPR trainers around.
Correct.
Too, aren't you?
CPR, first aid, a lot of courses that we give in there.
You bet. You know, our children's health and safety are issues of vital importance to all of our parents today. What are some of the top safety hazards that youngsters face?
Well, the major ages from 1 to 14 is usually a car-related injury, but it's accidents that cause deaths. It may be an accident from suffocation, from electrical, from falls, choking. These are accidents, but major deaths are usually caused in accidents more so than diseases and cancer or any other illnesses. So accidents is a major injury problem.
You were pointing out, of course, I know we've had some youngsters backed over in driveways and kids only about as tall as a tire anyway. So,
right.
Well, we're going to take a short break here for a commentary by our producer, Mike Kruchowski. We'll be talking about one of the leading killers of our children and how parents can, and what parents can do about it. So please stay with us. We'll be right back.
A recent article in the Albuquerque Journal reported that automobile accidents are becoming a leading killer of our children, despite today's greater use of seat belts and car seats. Some people will use this news to campaign against mandatory seatbelt laws, but concerned parents will realize that buckling their children in before driving is one of the best ways to safeguard their lives. This apparent contradiction is explained by two factors. First, children are spending more time and traveling more miles in cars today than they were just a few years ago. And sadly, far too many children are not being buckled in, even though their parents have heard this important safety message time after time. Here are a few things to think about for parents who still don't use car seats and seat belts for their children. A 15-mile-per-hour collision can cause enough brain damage to kill your child. Even at speeds this low, a blow to your child's head can turn his or her brains to the consistency of oatmeal. At the very best, your child might be a paralyzed vegetable requiring expensive, lifelong care. At worst, you'll spend agonizing hours in the hospital watching a precious life fade away. At freeway speeds, your child's skull is as fragile as an eggshell. Even if you suffer no physical injuries yourself in an accident, you'll die 1,000 deaths as you imagine your child's body being flung from your car like a missile and crushed by your own car or oncoming traffic. The thought is too gruesome to contemplate for long. Too often I see parents riding, or even driving, with their child on their lap. Don't believe for a moment you can manage to hold on to your baby during an accident, especially if you're not buckled in yourself, or if you're trying to control the car. The forces generated during a crash are incredible. Don't strap your child into your seatbelt with you. You'll only succeed in crushing your child's body with your own during the impact. Finally, don't let or make your children ride in the back of a pickup truck, whether it has a camper shell or not. Children love the adventure of riding in the back of an open pickup, but a slight swerve or acceleration can throw them right into the path of oncoming traffic. You're only rationalizing and gambling with your child's precious life if you think that's safe. Every child deserves a chance to live a long, safe, happy life. One of the best ways to give your child that opportunity is to start using a car seat from the very day mother and child leave the hospital. Many hospitals and insurance companies sponsor programs to sell and rent car seats at reduced cost. Ask one of the nurses at your hospital. If you don't know which car seats are safest, go to your local library to find the Consumer Reports evaluation of car seats. I'm sure the librarian will gladly help you find the information you need. If you're a grandparent, relative, or friend, consider buying a car seat as a gift instead of toys or clothing. Give that precious child the best gift of all, an honest chance to live a long life. You'll never be sorry you did.
Tonight, Dolores had a few drinks, did some crack, and ended up another tragic story. only she doesn't know it yet. Drugs make you forget. And if you forget how risky sex can be, you could catch the AIDS virus. AIDS, another way drugs can kill.
Welcome back to Speaking of Men. This is Public Access Television coming to you from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm your host, Mike Rivas. We hope you found Mike's comments worth considering. Today we're speaking with Phyllis White from the American Red Cross about some of those top safety hazards that affect our homes and youngsters. Before our break, we were talking about children and home hazards. What do you think are some of the most important first aid measures that parents and babysitters should be aware of? You know, what skills, I guess, I'm asking you, should they have to combat some of these problems?
First of all, you need to have a safe home. And the home needs to be safe from hazards that's around. And then your example of safety is your next thing. Then stay calm. And then you can go on into some of the training they should have is like rescue breathing, choking procedures, how to stop bleeding and things like that. Some of our courses, such as our standard first aid, it covers the rescue breathing when the heart stops, choking procedures. This here is a good one for your first aid also. It covers the wounds, the bleeding, bandaging, splitting if there's fractures, seizures for medical problems, strokes, diabetes, things like that, rescues for heat and cold emergencies, and rescue carries. This is one that's the most common one. It's an OSHA-approved course. Of course, if you're a parent, you may want your child or yourself to go through that, and then if you leave your infants or children with younger people, the infant and child CPR is a good course to take. And this covers just the infant and child. It also has a lot of prevention in there to what to look for injuries that children may get into or infants. Some of your most common causes is choking on your young people when you're at home. Car accidents because of lack of seat belting is another problem when you're just leaving, coming to and from home. You have some of those problems. The car accidents is because we usually don't seat belt our baby in the baby chair or seat, or we don't seat belt the chair itself into the car. So a lot of our infant our injuries are caused from that, a lack of us taking precautions again.
Someone was telling me that you can't, if you're in an accident, you're holding a child, there's so much force you can't hold a child.
It's tons of energy. It's the kinetics of our force. You think of weight going 60 miles an hour, that's a car. If he's going 60 miles an hour, everything else inside is going 60 miles an hour. Right. If anything's loose in there, it's going to slam up against something 60 miles an hour. That may be you or your little one that you love. So this is why seatbelt everybody in. Pin your briefcases down so it doesn't hit you on the back of the head or so on. Some of the other injuries that children can have is choking. If you're working with infants, make sure they have large enough toys to play with that it's not going to go down their throat and they'll choke on it, or parts of the toy. It can be such as wheels broken off or bitten off, and they can choke on that. So you need to have the appropriate type of toy for the infants. Some of the other hazards as a child grows older, by riding bicycles. Now this is where we get to teach them how to do car safety, read the street signs. The bike is supposed to be on the street, not on the sidewalk. And so they have to obey all rules that a car does. And that's kind of hard to do when they're just in a driveway and they're just, you know, the 3-year-old is just learning. Some of the problems is the road is flat, and that's where the child will play if we let him. So it's back to us parents to teach him the rules of the safety of the road. Another thing we can think about is helmets and pads. You know, knee pads, elbow pads, helmets for them to wear. So it's coming back to safety gear. We need to be close enough to this child so that if he's in trouble, we're there. Stay calm enough and then get the rescue there. If there's an accident or injury, we need to be able to get rescue, hopefully within 8 to 10 minutes. That's the medical trained person. Get them there in 8 to 10 minutes after the onset. So this is some of the things that the parents worry about when they're raising these little kids from tiny tykes all the way up. As they develop, then it's bicycles and then it's sports. So sports injuries are more and more problems in, because now you're letting your child get away and he's doing more activities, and he's more curious, so he's going to get into a lot more trouble. So he can be climbing things, he can fall. I was mentioning earlier, 3 lengths of your body is a spinal injury if you fell. So how tall is your infant when he falls off the table or the desk? Or how tall is your little 6-year-old that's just trying to get the cat out of the tree?
So you had a kid that was 1.5 feet tall, 5 feet.
Is this head, neck, or spinal injury? When they're very young children, their head is larger than their body, so what's going to hit the ground first? It's going to be their head. And more than likely, the head is going to be injured, plus the neck. And if you think of the neck as the little chain hooked onto a bowling ball up here, if you think of that, it doesn't have a whole lot of control, this spine. So the head, neck, and spinal, all the way down, you need to keep them straight. Still work with rescue breathing, though. If you think there's a problem, call 911 immediately. I think the biggest thing for babysitters and young parents, if you see a problem, you're not sure what it is, get your rescue there fast. And that means give that phone call, let them check the victim out, and see, do they need to go to the hospital or not? Rather than depending, is it my decision? Should I call them or should I not, or should I wait?
You bet. Yeah. Somebody was mentioning to me that infants drowning in the toilet bowl is, you know, they get head down in the...
Playing in the water.
Playing in the water, and then they can't get out and drown. Poisons are a big...
Poisons, anything that's drinkable. But let me ask you something. Have you ever seen rubbing alcohol?
Yeah.
What color is it? What does
Same
it look
color
like?
as water.
Same color as water. If you have a child that has a fever and you have this handy, it looks like water, he's going to drink it. It doesn't make any difference how bad it tastes, how bad it smells, he's still going to get some down his throat. And this is why small toddlers, they don't know how to read. You can warn them about the signs of the skull and crossbones and all this is poisonings, no. But if you have a sick child, he's thirsty, his throat's really raw, he's going to want to drink. And it doesn't make any difference to him what he drinks. So this is what we got to think about. What does gasoline look like? Kind of yellowish or orangish?
Could be pop or something.
Yeah, like weak Kool-Aid.
Weak Kool-Aid.
Weak Kool-Aid. Some kids like the smell of it, which makes it even worse, and they'll drink it. It may burn their throat all the way down, but this is a poison that can kill them. And this is things that parents don't think about. So when they're working in the garage and they got their jar out here with the gasoline, washing off their screws and bolts and whatever else that oil can get from, if it's in a collared thing and it's in a mason jar or anything else, the child may go over there and think, hey, look, that's drinkable. Let me have a drink. Dad's drinking it.
I had a couple of friends when I was a little kid that were trying to siphon gas because they'd seen their dads do that and grandfather do that. And one of them gave him, well, it actually killed Larry. I remember he got his heart, I guess. He never could recover.
Came down, burned his throat, went through his system already.
Right. You know, one of the problems that we're looking at these days is the number of children who are latchkey youngsters who are just left home unattended. There's no adult there for a great part of the day. Mom and dad work or from single-parent homes. And do you have, does this trend pose any special dangers, I suppose?
Well, I think it does dangers. We also have courses for them, too. It's called the Basic Aid Training course. It covers some of the rescue breathing, choking when the heart stops and wounds and bleeding.
And this now the child would take
this. This is something your little child can take.
Right.
It's just the major things. He works with rescue breathing. If he sees younger brother or younger sister turn blue, because we give them kind of the best descriptions that we can tell somebody when they're getting bad. So if he turns blue, what are you going to do? Well, first of all, they got to stay calm enough to start rescue breathing and make the phone call. Remember, he's by himself, so now he's going, oh my God, what do I do? So if you can make that 911 phone call, tell him what happened, and start working with the little one. Now, rescue or the 911 operator will probably ask you, do you know how to do rescue breathing, or do you know how to do this or that? And they can walk the child through the steps also. It's very frightening to a child because they're left alone. And noises really are bad for them. So with that child, the noises they may end up having to call 911 anyway.
Well, okay. And so there's a course just for youngsters.
Just for youngsters,
who might
basic
be at
aid
home
training.
by themselves. Well, that's a good thing to keep in mind. We're going to take another short break here from for another commentary from our producer, Mike Krachowski. And Mike's going to be talking about some of his impressions of the Albuquerque Journal's monthly magazine for women, Sage. So please stay with us. We'll be right back.
I have mixed feelings about Sage, the Albuquerque Journal's monthly magazine for women. On the one hand, Sage has featured a fair number of negative messages about men. For instance, in the November '90 issue, there was an article about child support entitled, "Making Him Pay." A few months later, the cover story was entitled, "The War Against Women." These sorts of headlines cater to those who believe most, if not all men, are irresponsible, violent brutes. While it's important that women find their voices to address issues of vital concern to themselves, it will be helpful to avoid the rhetoric of sexual conflict, which too often heightens animosity between women and men. Sage definitely targets its female readership, but in doing so, it frequently distorts issues by presenting only half the story. For example, the war against women ignored the fact that violence is rising against both women and men, and that men are still victims of violence from both sexes 3 times as often as women are. Sage, fortunately, has its bright side too. Its letters to the editor section. Although many articles don't explore the complex dynamics of male-female interactions, these deeper insights don't escape the notice of Sage's readers. Many women readers have joined men in challenging the ideas that women are simply victims and that all men are worthless. The editors have maintained a balance of viewpoints in the letters section, and I hope their policy will continue, because the willingness to listen to all sides of a story is the key to rebuilding mutual trust and respect between men and women.
She's fragile like a string of pearls. She's nobody's girl. She's nobody's girl. Ooh, she's nobody's girl.
Welcome back to Speaking of Men. This is Public Access Television coming to you from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm your host, Mike Rivas. We've been speaking today and are still speaking with Phyllis White about top safety hazards that our children and experience in the homes and elsewhere, and what parents and babysitters can be aware of. Phyllis, you were mentioning during the break that you guys offer a course called RAP, in which it would you tell us about that a little bit?
RAP is reaching out to adolescents and parents, and this is the mom that has to tell the child who is like 7, 8, 9 that his body's changing, so it's a little bit on development here. Or dad who has to explain the facts of life for the daughter. So the RAP course is a help for the parent. So this is a course that the parents go through so they can explain the facts of life about what we were talking about, how their bodies change and what's happening to them. And this is an excellent course for parents. I think nowadays, a lot of times our children learn it from the schools and from the peer pressure and don't get the full facts of what's happening to them. So I think this is a course that parents can come back with a family and be able to discuss it and talk to it and know what they're doing. So there's a lot of fun in this and a lot of work for the adult, but it's a lot of communication between the child and the parent, and I think that's excellent in that.
Well, you know, one of our main soapboxes here is talking about in the age of communication, we don't communicate very well, and this certainly sounds, the RAP course, what does RAP stand for again?
Adults, here we go, reaching out to adolescents and to the parent.
So
there,
that's the RAP course, and they can
That's
give
right.
you guys a call and come down and take that anytime they wanted
Right.
to. Any programs outside the Red Cross that you might want to recommend to single parents or talk about? You were mentioning that the police offer some
I think
speakers.
policemen have an excellent speaking area on the child left home by themselves and what the child needs to worry about and when to call the police, and if they're scared, what do we do? So the policemen have an educational area there that will go out and talk to your group or your school or your church members or whatever. With that, they also talk with like the campfire groups, things like this. So this is something I think the policeman is one of the areas that children need to know, that they're not the bad guy, that they can call them for help or safety when they hear that bad sound, they're left home by themselves and they don't know what happened.
You know, the police offer a lot of good programs. They have I think they've developed a domestic violence flying squad to deal with domestic violence. They really, you get, the APD gets a little bit of a bad rap, you know. They're placed in a hard situation to deal with, but they have a lot of support programs out there is the point I'd like to make. And if people, I'm sure they could call the public information office for those guys and just get a world of speakers. And anyone
the Poison Control Center is the other one, and I think that they do a lot of good because parents don't usually know what poison proofing or their house is, or getting the hazards out of the house. And this, they can talk to the young age, or they can talk to the older children, or the adults, you know, on that. So I think the Poison Control Center is another good information area. Also, children can call the Poison Control Center if they're babysitting and they think the baby, let's say, swallowed aspirin. What do I do next? The child is, should I call the parents, the mom or the dad? The babysitter's there watching them. So this is something that Poison Control Center is very good with, working with everyone, not just the babysitter, but everyone, and giving them information. And then they'll come out and do some guest speaking also.
give me the phone number to call real quick. We're down to the last.
For the American Red Cross, 265-8514. And we do all kinds of courses, and we're all waiting for you. And we need tons of volunteers to help us put this information out.
We'd like to thank everyone who helped make this program possible today, especially Phyllis White for coming down from the Red Cross and sharing some information with us. We'd also like to thank our viewers for watching. If you'd like to comment on this program, watch for our phone number and address in the credits. We're always interested in your feedback and input, so we appreciate that. Albuquerque viewers can see repeat broadcasts of this program if they're interested. This is Mike Rivas reminding you to stand if you can, run if you have to, but don't you quit. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mike.